This is a video of the last two chapters of Waiting for Normal for my students. It's been a while since I have posted um, the previous chapters. I kind of wanted to keep you all in suspense, um, but it's time. So if you remember, we had read up through the end of chapter 47, and the very last thing that happened was Mommers had come to Grandio's house to visit Addie, and Grandio really didn't want her to stay, but allowed a few minutes for them to talk. And then when she left, um, Grandio started ranting, and I think Addie had just had enough, and she kind of yelled out, "Stop! I can't stand it if you keep going on about her. I can't." I burned with tears and silence for the next few seconds. I expected him to shout back at me, but he didn't. He finally ducked his head and mumbled, "You're right, girl. That's it. I'm done with it now." Somehow I knew he meant it. And so that's where we ended at the end of chapter 47. So there are two chapters left, chapter 48 and 49. And we're going to go ahead and see what happens here at the end. And this chapter, chapter 48, is entitled Full of Surprises. So things have kind of evolved for Addie. She's had a lot of big things happen, hard things to deal with in her life. And, I'm waiting for something good. How about you guys? Remember the title, Waiting for Normal. So maybe normal's coming for her. Let's find out. Full of Surprises, chapter 48. And if anybody happens to have a copy that you are looking at, we're on page 284. All through the month of May, I got visits. Dwight and Hannah brought the littles down to me as much as 3 times a week. "You are here a lot," I said one day. "What about the work on the inn, and what about your wedding?" They just said they were budgeting time differently these days, and that the wedding was on hold until some other things got worked out. At first, I was afraid they'd change their minds about marrying, but they always walked in holding hands. I knew to watch Brenna, and I did. If anything were wrong, she'd be twisting her napkin. She seemed happier than ever. I longed to go up to Lake George, but youth and family services had me sort of captive, within a certain radius of Grandio's house. I could go places, but not far. I didn't ask questions. Elliot and Rick took me to the mall one night and spoiled me rotten with French fries, root beer, bubble gum, and a new CD player. While we were there, we put my name on a list at the music store. They'd call about any second-hand flutes that came in, but it might be a while. I ended up spending some of the Sula Flute Fund money anyway. I took half an hour to decide, but then I bought an Irish tin whistle. "I want something to play in the meantime," I told Elliot and Rick. "Someday I'll be good enough to try a piccolo. This tin whistle will be pretty easy." I figured out part of my solo from "I Wonder as I Wander" before we even left the store. That tells me that Addie has a gift with music. And, we read months ago about how she felt like she struggled and she really had to practice ahead of time to get it right. But I think a lot of people have to do that. And I think it shows how much she cares and she wants to get it right. "Wow, that's beautiful. How did you do that?" Rick asked. "She's brilliant," Elliot told him. I giggled into the whistle and made it squeak something awful. Heads turned. We left the mall in a fit of laughs. So there's a break in the page here. Little times taking place. Mrs. Casey made regular visits to the farm. We talked about everyone in my family, including the people I thought of as my family, even if there wasn't a blood relationship. "I want to live with my sisters and my Dwight," I told her. I didn't care that it wasn't likely to happen or that I was just a pebble in a big sea that would decide what to do with me. Or that I was just a pebble in a big sea that would decide what to do with me. "We belong together," I insisted. I even tried to explain my idea of normal to her. There's that word normal again. For all of my rattling on and on, I felt like Mrs. Casey was wasting everyone's time. I'd end up with Mommers again somewhere down the line. But there was one thing about Mommers that I'd forgotten to figure in. She was full of surprises. Now that is a clue. I wonder what Mommers is up to. In early June, when everything was quiet and nobody, including me, seemed to be clawing for anything at all, I looked up from where I was watering Grandio's new marigolds. I saw Dwight coming across the yard. "Addie," he called. "Addie, you won't believe this." He fell right down on his knees about 20 feet in front of me. What could it be? You're making a prediction? He reached into his back pocket and held a fat envelope up high. I wonder what it is. A bunch of money, maybe? "What's that?" I asked. "Adoption papers." His voice rang out. "You're mine. I'm yours." Oh my gosh. "We're what?" I dropped the hose. I took a step toward him. "Don't be a dream. Don't be a dream." Now that's written in italics, so that means that this is Addie's thought. "For real?" I asked. "For real," he said. I ran to him full speed ahead, arms open wide, and hit him hard. We both fell over in the grass. Grandio found us a few minutes later. We were lying on our bellies, elbows linked. We had the paper spread out in front of us, and I kept sniffling and running my fingertips over the circular seals that seemed embossed into every page. It was official. "What's with you two? You'll get bugs up your shirts," Grandio said. "3 girls, Jack. I got 3 girls." Dwight stood up and handed the papers to Grandio. "Did you both know about this?" I asked. "We've been working on it with your Mrs. Casey," Grandio grinned. "And so have you, girl, though you didn't know it. We didn't want to say anything until it really came through." He put his glasses on his nose and scanned the papers. "So Denise did a good thing, by gosh, signed and with no stipulations." "That's Mommers," I said, wiping my face with my hands. "All or nothing." I fell back on the grass and watched the sky spin. I think Addie's pretty happy about this. So what does this mean? What does this mean for Addie? Is she going to be living with her sisters and Dwight and Hannah now? We have one chapter. Let's see how it comes together here. Chapter 49 is entitled All to Home. And I bet you remember where that comes from. Katie or Brenna, which is the youngest, always said this. All to home. She couldn't quite get things right. And instead of saying, we're home, she just said, we're all to home. So let's see what this means. With just 2 weeks left until the start of summer vacation, we all decided together that it would make the most sense for me to finish out the year at boarding school. It was hard to wait, but it was also the first time I'd ever had the chance to get used to the idea of moving somewhere new. I sat beside Dwight on the front seat of the pickup the day he drove me home to Lake George. I held Piccolo's cage on my lap and settled my palm into the spot where Sula's weight had bent the wires the morning of the fire. Wow. Dwight reached over and covered my hand with his. He gave me a grin, and I matched it. I knew I'd see Mommers again. Maybe someday she'd be allowed to bring her new baby to see her old babies. She did love us. I knew that. And I decided to look for a time to tell Brenna and Katie so. I wiped away a spill of tears, closed my eyes, and remembered some of the times that Mommers had made me laugh. Once off the highway, the truck wound along the old mountain road. I braced myself and held Pick's cage a little tighter. I lost my place. Once off the road, the truck wound along the old mountain road. I braced myself and held Pick's cage a little tighter as we took the last sharp turn that met the straightaway up to the inn. It made me laugh when I thought about it. I had come twisting and turning home. Twisting and turning. Remember in the first few chapters and really throughout the whole book, Addie made references to her life being full of what? Twists and turns, right? Sunlight glowed across the new lawn and broke into a patchwork of shadows on the porch. Brenna and Katie came running out the open door, giggling and carrying a long banner that circled and blew back against their legs. I watched the roll of paper straighten out before me. In big painted letters with little handprints everywhere, it read, "All to home, Addie." All, I whispered to myself. Then I hustled up to the porch to be with my sisters. And that's the end. So it's a happy ending. I think Addie finally did get her normal. This title is Waiting for Normal. And, throughout the whole book, we wondered, how would that turn out for Addie and what would it look like? And so Addie has such a good heart. She's caring about her mom, and she knows that her mom loves her and her sisters, and she's going to make sure her sisters know that. So, what a terrific book. I hope one day you can pick it back up and read it front to back, straight through without interruptions and without having to hear me read it to you. You can pick it up and read it for yourself because it is a wonderful story. And have a great day.